Some blessings are not delivered by angels, but by roots that remember the shape of a grave. Some families are not born, but adopted from the deep, dark parish beneath our feet. And some prayers are not whispered to heaven, but into the hollows of trees that whisper back. This is the confession of a man who learned too late that the most dangerous thing you can receive is the one thing you desperately desire. Family, this is the Dread Codex. Gather close. The soil is listening. The story begins. My name is Elias Macready. I write this by candlelight, for I dare not trust the electricity. It carries voices in the hum. This is my testament. In the autumn of 1998, my wife Eleanor and I arrived in Gethsemane's Hollow, West Virginia. We came to run the old Miller farm, a plot that had lain fallow for a generation since the family vanished overnight. The deed was cheap. The realtor's smile was thinner than paper. The heart of the property was a private cemetery, but its true altar was the tree. A single, colossal American beech, older than the county itself. Its bark was smooth and pale as bone. Its branches arched low, like arms waiting to embrace or ensnare. At its base, the roots had woven a cathedral hollow, large enough for a child to crawl inside. The locals called it the confessional tree. They never lingered long enough to explain. From the first night, I felt its attention. Not a gaze, a pressure, a gravity. While other trees danced in the wind, the beech stood utterly, unnaturally still. Eleanor carried a hollow of her own. Our years of trying for a child had ended in a silence that grew between us. The farm was to be a fresh start, a distraction, but the hollows only echoed louder here. The first gift appeared on the third morning. A dead fox lay on our porch. Not mangled, not torn. It was arranged with its paws folded, its brush straight, as if in state. No blood. No marks. Just the faint, sweet scent of turned earth and frankincense. "A welcome," Eleanor murmured, her eyes too bright. I buried it behind the barn, my skin crawling. The gifts continued. Black morel mushrooms circling the porch steps overnight. River stones, warm to the touch on frost-crusted ground, laid in the shape of a cradle. Each offering was preceded by a low, grinding shift in the earth, like stone teeth gnashing deep below. Then I saw the giver. It stood in the cemetery beneath a full moon, tall and thin as a gallows post. It wore a long coat, tattered and stained the deep brown of wet clay. Its face was a hollow, the smooth, dark void of the tree's trunk. It cradled a bundle of yellowed linen, which it placed gently inside the root hollow. Then it turned. Not its head, it had none, but its presence swiveled toward the house. A voice, not in my ears but in the very marrow of my spine, spoke. "She is returned. Tend the root." I shook Eleanor awake. She saw only moonlight and shadow. She called it a dream. We found the child a week later. She lay in the hollow, silent and awake, swaddled in that same ancient linen. Her eyes were the color of river silt. She did not cry. She did not coo. She stared. Around her neck hung a pendant, a shard of slate etched with a serpent coiled around a shepherd's crook. Eleanor wept with a sound that was half joy, half breaking. She gathered the girl up. A miracle, she breathed into the cold, dark hair. I smelled the scent of the gifts on her skin. Wet loam, decaying hymnals. We named her Grace. Grace did not grow. She solidified. Her skin was cool and smooth as polished stone. She never cried, only made a soft, percussive click in her throat, like two river stones tapped together. She would not take milk. She turned her head from mashed peas, from apple sauce. But when a chick wandered from the coop, and I found it life's in her crib, its tiny body was empty, desiccated, as if all moisture had been absorbed. The dreams began for me. The clay-stained preacher stood at the foot of my bed, his form a shifting mosaic of bark and broken sacrament. She is of the Deep Parish. You will feed her. Her first blood is our communion. I'd wake with soil in my mouth. Our dog, a loyal hound named Saul, was found one morning sitting upright by the tree. He was perfect, save for his eyes replaced by smooth gray stones, and the fact that he was hollow as a gourd. Eleanor sobbed. I finally went to town, to the only church. Father Alistair was a tired man, but when I showed him the slate pendant, his fatigue turned to pure ash. The Millers weren't farmers, he whispered, drawing the blinds. Hezekiah Miller was a theologian of the soil. He believed God slept not in heaven, but in the mantle of the earth. He formed the Deep Parish. Their rites were baptisms in mud, communions with what dwelled in the limestone caves. They meant to create a saint from the earth itself. His daughter, Mercy, was to be the vessel. She died before the final rite. The priest's hands trembled as he poured a whiskey. In his grief and rage, Hezekiah interred her in the roots of that beech, to bind her to the land. He vowed the parish would one day return her, perfected. He looked at me, his eyes haunted. That thing you are raising, she is not a child. She is an invitation, and the RSVP is paid in the flesh of those who accept. I drove home through a world gone gray. Eleanor was on the porch, singing to Grace. As I watched, a beetle crawled from a plank toward Grace's bare foot. It touched her skin, shuddered, and turned to a pinch of dry dust. I told Eleanor everything that night. Her hope didn't break, it fossilized. Superstition. Poisonous old gossip, she screamed. But I saw the doubt later when she bathed Grace. She wiped a dark, granular residue from behind the child's ear. She stared at the washcloth, then quickly, quietly, rinsed it down the drain. She chose not to tell me. She chose the lie. The final gift came at midnight. A 10-point buck lay on our doorstep, its throat cut in a priestly vertical slit. Pinned to its hide with a thorn was a note, the script like crawling roots. The feast of the return is at hand. Prepare the lamb. The vestry. The smell of damp soil and frankincense was overwhelming. Eleanor's faith shattered. We would run. At first light. We packed in terrified silence. Grace sat in her crib watching, clicking her stone-on-stone click. An hour before dawn, the world went silent. Then dark. The power died with a final sigh. The moon vanished behind a cloud so thick it felt like wool. Thud. A single impact shook the porch. Thud. Heavier. Closer. Thud. The front door groaned. Not a knock. The sound of a great weight leaning into the wood. We backed away. Grace began to hum. A low, vibrational drone that resonated in the fillings of my teeth. The back door exploded inward. He stood there. The preacher's coat was a living tapestry of moss, burrowing worms, and pale, seeking rootlets. His face was a smoothed hollow, and deep within, 2 points of foxfire glimmered like damned stars. In one long, root-knotted hand, he held a stone chalice. Eleanor's scream died in her throat, becoming a whimper. The figure tilted its void. The voice did not come from it, but from the walls, the floorboards, the soil beneath the house. The covenant is sealed in your acceptance. The feast of return commences. It extended the chalice toward Grace. Our daughter sat up. Her silt eyes overflowed, streaming thick black soil down her cheeks. She opened her mouth, and the tuneless hum focused into a clear, echoing word, spoken by a chorus of distant, buried things. Father. The floorboards erupted. Thick blind roots, white as grubs, shot upward. One snaked around Eleanor's waist. It yanked. She flew off her feet, dragged toward the doorway and the waiting chalice. I fought. I grabbed the fireplace poker. It shattered against a root like glass against iron. I fell to my knees, the only weapon I had left tearing from my raw throat, the old words, the true words. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. The thing in the doorway recoiled. The roots flinched. A shriek of pure, blasphemous fury shook the house, rattling the china in its cabinet. Thy kingdom is here. Thy will is written in the soil. But the hesitation was enough. I seized Eleanor's arm, hauled her free. We stumbled, fell, crawled toward the kitchen, toward the old root cellar door. The last exit. We did not look back at the crib. We knew what sat in it was no longer a child, if it ever was. We plunged into the cold, damp dark, slamming the trapdoor shut above us. We huddled in the absolute black, listening to the house being unmade, the splintering of wood, the grinding of stone on stone, and that terrible, eager, droning hum. At dawn, a silence so complete it was deafening. We emerged into ruin. The walls leaned inward as if bowed in prayer. Every surface was dusted with fine gray soil, like ash after a cremation. Grace was gone. Her crib was filled to the brim with rich black loam. From its center sprouted a single, flawless white mushroom. On the shattered mantelpiece sat the stone chalice. It was now full of a dark, viscous fluid that smelled of copper and damp stone. Beside it lay a tiny gown, meticulously woven from dried moss and the pale bells of lily of the valley. An invitation. A baptismal gown. We ran. We changed our names. We moved across 3 states. I thought the story ended there. Last month, on the anniversary, I awoke in our sterile 3rd-floor apartment to a familiar scent, wet clay and myrrh. On my pillow rested a single crimson beech leaf, perfect in its autumn fire, a tree that does not grow within 500 miles of here. And as the bedside lamp flickered and died, the whisper came, not from the window or the door. It bled from the air vents, a chorus of grinding stone, sighing roots, and that innocent clicking hum. The feast is eternal, Father. The parish is patient. We are listening from the deep. And we are so very hungry for your return. This is the story of the confessional tree of Gethsemane's hollow. It is not a ghost story. It is a ledger. A record of a debt taken out in desperation, to be paid in generations of flesh. The most profound evil does not deny the divine. It perverts it. It writes its scripture in the marrow of the lonely, and builds its altar from the bones of their hope. So listen, family. Listen with more than your ears. If you are ever offered a gift that perfectly fills the hollow space in your heart, if the land itself seems to hold its breath around an old, silent tree, if you hear a hymn in the trembling of the roots beneath your home, run. Do not look back. Do not name the blessing you find. For some families are not haunted by the past. They are chosen for a future. They are the designated feeders for a hungering ancient parish that waits below, forever patient, forever listening for the sound of a desperate prayer. Their sacrament is your sorrow. Their communion is your child. This truth becomes our tale. If you have a story that clings like soil, send it to contact.thedreadcodex@gmail.com. Your likes and comments keep these warnings alive. Until next time, may your foundations be solid. May your prayers be heard only by benevolent ears. Good night.